Hi, today I've been photographing a blackbird, but not just any blackbird. This is a very special one. It's a partial albino. Now you do get completely white albino blackbirds. It's a species that's very prone to it, but this one is partially white, but I think it's the perfect mixture. It's got a white head, but then it's got fleckles of white in the feathering on the body. It looks very, very attractive. The bird does. The settings look terrible. Look at this contrasty light. Look at me, half lit, half in shadow. And it's been like this all day. I've been here since 10 minutes to 10 this morning. It's now 10 minutes past 3, and I've just been hoping that the cloud would come and it would get a lovely soft gentle light, but we haven't. It's been harsh sunlight all day. Now sometimes you want this. Yesterday I was photographing a stonechat in flight, and for that I really wanted strong sunlight like this to get the shutter speeds, get the detail in the plumage. But for this I've been wanting cloud all day long. Photographers are like farmers. They've never got the right weather. I think they call that being photobombed, don't they? I didn't see them coming at all. I should redo all that, but I'm going to leave it in because, believe it or not, when you do this bit to camera, sometimes you do it about 20 times before you get it right. And I actually think I got that fairly right. I just didn't realise there were some people in the background. Now I know I should not be calling this bird an albino or partial albino. It's not. The proper term is leucistic, a leucistic blackbird, where it's just got partial white feathering in it. A true albino bird would have a pink eye because there'd be no colour in the eye at all, and you'd just be looking at the glow from the blood vessels running through the eye. What I didn't know until I researched it for this film is it is thought that no bird born as an albino in the wild has ever survived until adulthood. They only survive in captivity, and this is mainly because their eyesight is very poor, and also of course that white plumage will make them prone to predation. Now there's a huge difference between cloudy bright and shadow. I'm standing in shadow at the moment, and that's usually a very poor light, and especially with a blackbird. It's lifeless. Now cloudy bright, when you get a thin veil of cloud over the sky and the sun is having to filter through that, that's like a big softbox, and it really softens the light. It makes it unidirectional as well. I can photograph from any direction, and that's the sort of light I need for this. It will reduce all this contrast, and maybe I'm going to come back tomorrow morning. If I get here at 8 o'clock, sunrise is about 7:45 I think at the moment, then I would expect to have some much softer light for the first couple of hours maybe. This shot really illustrates how contrasty it is, and guess what? Where does the bird stand? Always in the shadow. That's where the worms are more likely to be by the surface. So it goes along that shadow, and when it comes to a bright sunny patch, it just runs across it to the next shadow. Makes photography very difficult. I don't really like that where there's shadow in the foreground and bright lights in the background. I want it more even like this. So the bird has come into a patch where there is some soft lighting, and that really helps to deal with the contrast between the blacks and the whites. Leucism is caused by a missing pigment that is responsible for the darker feathers, blacks, browns and greys, and it's passed on through the generations, so an adult passes it on to its offspring. Leuistic birds are not always the healthiest of birds because the feathers tend to be on the weak side, and they can suffer from wear and tear, and they might not be able to fly all that well. But this individual, well, he certainly looks very healthy, and I think he's just got the perfect mixture of black and white, and it makes him look absolutely beautiful. He flew up onto a wall on one occasion, and I ran over to him as quickly as I could, but he moved. He went to the back of the wall where you can't see his feet, and that was a great pity because it was a nicely coloured wall. Notice that stick on the right hand side? Well, that had to disappear in case he jumped up on that wall again. I didn't want the stick there. Unfortunately, he never did. Mallards are another species that's very prone to having white individuals. but they always look like mallards. They don't look like a farmyard Aylesbury duck, for instance. There is another term as well, dilution. Some birds that don't so much look white as the colours in the bird just look faded all over. This is also caused by the same pigment, but not being missing, but just being on the weak side. This moorhen was at Slimbridge in Gloucestershire for some years. I haven't seen it for a long time now, but this is possibly an example of dilution. We'll look at the camera equipment I was using to photograph the blackbird. Starting with the tripod, I have two tripods. One is much bigger and heavier than this one. The bigger one is a 2-barred tripod, a proper video tripod with a very heavy video head on it. If I haven't got to walk too far, that's the one I prefer to use. I want the weight. Weight helps to reduce the vibration. But if I've got to walk somewhere, or when I'm flying, this one certainly comes with me because this fits in my suitcase. The bigger tripod doesn't. Some of the features that's important about a tripod: this is a Velban. I couldn't tell you what the model number is, it's worn off it some time ago now. But the important features is it will go down to ground level, and quite often as a wildlife photographer we want to shoot right down low. To do that, the centre column has to come out. Well, this centre column unscrews. Then I can release each of the legs and fold the leg so it goes completely flat. Then the head is right down on the floor. That's a very important feature. You can buy tripods where they give you more than one centre column. They give you a stubby one, short one, and a long one like that. The disadvantage of having the two centre columns is you lose the one that's not fitted. If you've got the stubby one and you put it somewhere, you can't find it. So I like it when the centre column actually unscrews and extends. But in the same way that I want it to go down low, I also want it to go high enough too. It's got to reach my eye. So you want a tripod that is as tall as you are. If the tripod doesn't go quite high enough and you're standing up doing birds in flight, you're very uncomfortable. You're stooping a little bit to look through the viewfinder. That makes it awkward to follow the bird through the viewfinder. So it's got to go as high as you are. The head. The head is far more important than the tripod itself. Gimbal heads are very popular with wildlife photographers. I've had several of them over the years. I had the original gimbal head when they first came out. I had a Jobo head, a BH BK45, and a mongoose. A mongoose was very expensive and very, very lightweight. I try each of them for a couple of months, but I always give up and go back to video heads. Not just for video work, but for stills photography too. I've always preferred video heads. I don't want a free spinning head. I want resistance. When I'm pushing to follow a bird, I feel in far more control. And as the bird banks, I just have to push slightly less hard, then I'm going the other way. I find it much easier when I've got the resistance that you get with a video head rather than a free spinning head. There are gimbal heads that have got resistance built into them, but I just find video heads much easier. This is a Benro S8. I've had the Manfrotto range over the years: 500, 501, 502, 503. They're all very similar and they're all quite economically priced too. They don't necessarily last that long. This is a few years old now, maybe 5 years old, and I'm using my equipment a lot, almost daily, and it's starting to wear. And the Manfrotto heads used to wear as well. You could get the Manfrotto heads serviced. Maybe you can get these serviced too, but it's £100. It lasts me 5 years. That's a bargain for me. But I like I'll give you an analogy as well. If you're driving your car down a mountain road through a series of S-bends, you don't put the car into neutral so that it's free spinning. You put the car into third gear if you've got a manual gearbox, and that means you're using the engine as a brake, and it's much easier to control the car as you go through those bends. That's the way I feel about a video head. I want that resistance. I feel in far more control. This is the camera I was using. It's the Olympus or OM camera 150 to 400mm lens. I have to have a Manfrotto mount on it because this is a Manfrotto quick release. It has a built-in Arca Swiss release on the foot It's a pity this isn't an Arca Swiss, but anyway, it's just a Manfrotto quick release, but certainly quick release is vital. I don't want to be messing about with screws, having to screw it on. Likewise, the camera unit as it is, with the lens hood, with the body on the lens, that fits in my camera bag. So I take it out of the bag, it's ready to go. I don't have to start to assemble it. I love using the lens. It's also got the built-in 1.25 extender over here. I can just throw a switch and I put the extender in. I never want to go back to a prime lens again. In my Canon days, I had the 500mm, the 600mm, the 800mm over the years, 30-40 years using Canon gear. Every day I curse them because you've got a fixed focal length. The subject comes too close to you, it's too big in the frame, you're losing pictures daily. Every day you lose pictures by having a prime lens. You've got a zoom, subject comes closer, you just zoom back. I always wanted a zoom lens in my Canon days, and they weren't available then. And now that I've got a zoom, I also had the Sony 200-600 for a while. That was the first optically good zoom lens I had when I was trying out the Sony A1. Never ever want to touch a prime lens again. Camera body, the OM1. Doesn't matter what brand of camera you use, I'd be quite happy whether I'm using Canon, Nikon, Sony, Fuji. Makes no difference at all to me. If I buy a new camera, I don't buy it because I think I'm going to get better quality pictures. I buy a new camera because of the feature on that camera that I think I want. The Sony A1 had flickerless technology in the viewfinder, no blackout when you were taking pictures. And although people kept telling me about this, I couldn't believe it until I actually got one myself. I couldn't see how it would work, but I think it makes such a difference to be able to follow a bird in flight when you've got constant viewing rather than that annoying flicker as the shutter opened and closed. So of course they all copy each other, so now all the manufacturers have got this flickerless technology. I wouldn't have gone for the OM1 if they hadn't got that feature built into it. Pro capture, that's something else I'd have bought a camera for. I believe that Olympus were the first to really develop pro capture. Now all the other brands have followed them except for Sony at this point, and they probably will. So new features come out and all brands adopt them, but in terms of the image quality, I think all cameras are wonderful, all take wonderful pictures. So that's it, that's the equipment I was using on the day. Thanks for watching.